Welcome to Your Impact Story. Our goal is to inspire you to have a positive impact on the world around you. And now, here is author, speaker, coach, and our host, Dustin Rogers.
Hey friends, welcome to Your Impact Story. I'm your host, Dustin Rogers. Have the great opportunity to interview folks from around the world who are creating impact every day. Our goal is to inspire you to have a positive impact on the world around you from our show. I've got the great honor today to be joined by my friend, Mr. Dave Kauffman. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dustin. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. For those of you who don't know Dave Kauffman is a top 100 keynote speaker, author, trainer, business coach, human behavior expert, and a master trainer on the DISC model of human behavior. He's only one of 10 in the world. Dave is the president of Empowering Small Business, an international business coaching firm specializing in helping business owners systematize their business so they can find the freedom in their business, enabling them to spend more time with their family and friends. Dave is handpicked by the Zig Ziglar family to carry on the Ziglar legacy, an American legend. As an expert in human behavior and relationships, Dave has trained thousands of people how to perform at a higher level in sales, communication, relationships by understanding the four basic personality styles. He enjoys entertaining, challenging, and enabling audiences to bring meaningful change to their relationships. Get ready to discover things about yourself and others that will help you to take you to the next level of performance. Get ready to learn, get ready to move, get ready to grow. Dave Kauffman, this is your impact story.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Dustin. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Glad to have you on the show. So you and I actually met in person at a sales conference in South Carolina a few years ago, and had a great conversation, I think, on a break. Just got to know each other a little bit at that point and have stayed in touch since. So I'm very honored to have you on the show. Look forward to talking about your work. But people see you today. They see Dave, the speaker, the coach, and so you didn't go to school just right out of the gate saying, "Hey, I'm going to be a world-renowned speaker. I'm going to be handpicked by the Ziglar family to carry on Zig's legacy. I'm going to be a one of 10 master disc trainer." That wasn't out of the gate who you were or who you thought you were. I wouldn't think so. So talk us through the early days of Dave Kauffman and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, well, that you're exactly right. I did not go to school. I did not expect all of this stuff, but I will say at 13 years old, I went to my dad and I said, "Dad, I feel like I'm supposed to do something with my life that doesn't include farming." I grew up on a big farm in Georgia. And he said, "Well, what is it? What do you think it is?" And I said, "I don't know, but people are going this direction, and I'm supposed to help him go that direction." And so my dad said, "Are you going to be a preacher?" And I said, "Oh, no, I hope not." And but he said something very wise to me at 13 years old. He says, "Son, always walk towards that feeling." And so as I got into my adulthood and started jobs and I enjoyed every stage of my job, whether it was working on the farm, working on construction, getting into sales, and felt very fulfilled in my path. But I always felt like that calling was still out there. And so when I started speaking and coaching, and I'll tell you how I got into that, but when I started that, that feeling was not out there. It was around me.
Okay.
And it's a real blessing. It's a very comforting feeling to know that you are in your purpose, that you're in, you're doing what you thought you were going to, or not. I didn't think I was going to be doing this, but I'm doing what I was called to do. And so when I was a kid, I don't know if I ever told you this, there was three things that I wanted to be when I grow up. I wanted to be an auctioneer,
Okay.
a pilot, and a veterinarian. And I'm all three except one. I'm not a veterinarian.
A
I love
veterinarian.
animals, but I hate blood. But I did get, I don't know if I told you, I got my auctioneer's license down here in Florida when I was 27 years old.
That's awesome. I did not know that. That's a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
story.
Yeah.
So talk, I mean, at 13 years old, what a wise thing for your father to say to you, right? With your family, with the background there, he could have easily said, "No, son, look at this farm, look at what we have here,
Yeah.
and need you and want you to continue on this path." But to say, always walk towards that feeling. What a strong and wise thing for your father to say, that gave you the comfort, right, and the support to say, "Hey,
Yeah.
okay, keep walking." Right. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that I get
Yeah.
there tomorrow, but keep going towards that feeling. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I think my mom tells me all the time, my dad passed away 5 years ago, August 1st, 5 years ago. And my mom tells me all the time, you're just like your dad. And I think my dad recognized that at a very early age. And my dad was very entrepreneurial. He told me a lot of times, he says, son, you have a lot of pregnant ideas. And he said, I love that about you. And so I think he knew because he knew who he was. And, with growing up in the Mennonite faith, there was a lot of bumpers or, guardrails
Sure.
that kept him from doing certain things. And, he gave me the permission several times to just go do and be who you are. And so I think he recognized that in himself, that he had that entrepreneurial spirit and the desire to like impact. And he gave me that permission at 13 years old. And so I agree. It's a very wise thing for him to say.
Absolutely. That's outstanding. To any who else has impacted you throughout your life and through your career that's kind of helped you to get where you are today?
So obviously, my dad, very much. I could tell you all kinds of stories. We were driving to Macon, Georgia, to get some parts for some equipment, and I forget how old I was, probably 8 years old. And he said, "Son," he looked over at me and said, "Son, never, never come back the way that you went." And I'm like, what do you mean? He says, well, we came I-75, but we're going to come back through, back roads. And I said, why? He said, because we've already seen I-75. When you go to another direction, you're going to see things that you haven't seen, and those ideas that you have are going to be starting to spark. And so, I use that in my training when I talk to, corporations and individuals. Always be prospecting, always look at, don't read just your industry magazines, read another industry magazine, because what you know can be applied to what they know, and what they know can be applied to what you know. So never go or come back the way that you went. Obviously, Jesus Christ, without him, I'm nothing. And that's, the biggest impact, obviously. And you mentioned Zig Ziglar. I got to meet him before he passed away, and got to know the family. And, I'm going to actually turn my camera and
Okay.
show you my wall of gratitude. All of those people right there have impacted me tremendously. So Zig is up there, Tom Ziegler is up there, Delatorre McNeil, Howard Partridge, Ron Klein, the inventor of the magnetic strip on the credit card, just an amazing guy. He taught me that behind every challenge, there's a gift. And so when you're in the challenge, look for the gift. Look, and COVID was a huge challenge, but it unleashed one of the biggest gifts. And I had some of my biggest audiences virtually in the middle of that challenge, because there was a gift. Everybody was at home and wanted some impact. And so Myron Golden, Noah Weiler, Dr. Rome, there's just, yeah, all kinds of people up there. So there's a lot of people that have impacted me, but I'd say the top three would be my dad and Zig and obviously Christ.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Faith, it's awesome to see how you use your faith and walk in your faith in everything that you do. It's not often talked about on a business podcast, right? But when it comes to impact, when it comes to self-help and self-improvement, I think that we have to start on the inside out. And
Yeah.
there's no better way to do that learning ourselves and learning what God has for us to do, right? How we
Yeah.
can glorify Him in our work, and I very much have appreciated that and watching you and getting to know you through your work. Very much respect that about you and appreciate that about you for sure.
Well, thank you. I often tell the story of a young kid that was coming up to his dad's desk and he says, "Daddy, Daddy, can we go play catch?" And the son says, "No, son, can't you see I'm busy?" And he gets back to work and the kid runs off. And 10 minutes later, the kid comes back and says, "What about now? Can we play catch now?" And dad says, "No, son, I'm busy," and sends him off again. And this happens several times. And finally, the dad gets a little perturbed and tears out a picture out of a magazine of the world, the globe. And he says, "Son, when you put the world together," and he tears it up in a bunch of pieces, "when you put the world together, I'll play catch with you." And so the son goes, and 10 minutes later, he comes with the globe put back together. And the dad says, "Son, that's amazing. How did you do that?" And the son said, "Well, on the other side of the page, when I got the man, there was a picture of a man's face. And when I got the man right, the world became right." And
Wow.
so, uh, self-help and understanding, who we are, and that we are not God and we are created. When we find that order and when we come into alignment with that order, things start happening and things start aligning, and your world looks different when you have that kind of a worldview. Because I know I'm not God, pretty sure you're not,
That's right.
and I want to serve the God that created me. And
Absolutely.
so you have to be in alignment with that ideology, I think, for true success to happen.
All right, I agree 100%. And I can say in my own journey, in my own walk, I really struggled personally for a few years. I thought it was I thought it was professionally, right? Like I was looking for purpose in my work, and I was looking for alignment in, why is my personal life and my professional life not seem to be going in line together? They seem to be working against each other some. And
Yeah,
and the more I continued to try to find the look to the work to be the solution, right? And made a career change, made some moves, thinking this is what I need to be doing. This is the answer. But really, the answer was inside of me, and not looking elsewhere, but create that impact and make that change in my heart, and then let that flow outward. So
yeah,
that's a constant journey. That's a life journey. But there's no better way than from the inside out.
yeah, yeah. Very true. Very true.
So you mentioned Zig. We've talked about Zig a little bit. You and I actually talked about Zig when we met. I think I told you the story when I was a kid. I used to ride around with my parents. They're both entrepreneurs, small business owners, and I remember as a young child, my mom listening to Ziglar tapes, and we actually went. I may have been 13 or 14 years old. Took a day off from school and went to a conference where Zig spoke, Colin Powell spoke, a few other folks. And I remember that it had a huge impact on my life. And so I've read some of Zig's books. I've listened to his tapes. I'm not that old, but I've listened to his tapes, listened to his podcast back when it was the Ziglar podcast. And so tell me a little bit about the work that you've had the opportunity to do with and through the Ziglar family.
Yeah. So, he passed away in 2012. And so about in 2014 is when Tom came up to me. I was at a conference where Tom and I were speaking, and he says, "We've been watching you, and how would you like to um, carry on the legacy of my dad?" And I said, "Well, fantastic." And I said, "But I want to think about it because I knew that that would kind of change
Sure.
my life." And so my wife was with me it was in Destin, Florida. And so we went to PF Chang's, and I really wanted to do it and felt like that was part of that calling that I felt at 13 years old. So, but we prayed about it, we talked about it, we decided that we would do it, and then they brought the check with the fortune cookies. Okay, now I don't place a lot of stock in fortune cookies,
Sure.
but this right there, I don't know if your readers can see this. You have the ability to touch the lives of many people was the fortune cookie that they gave me, and it was for me, it was a confirmation
Sure.
that I should do it. So I called Tom and said the answer is yes. So my coach, Howard Partridge, who's up here on the wall, was the first person that they tapped. And he's now the exclusive small business coach for the Ziglar Corporation. So he's doing a fantastic job with them. But then I was the second person that they tapped. And so what they did is they gave us access to Zig's top three talks and
Okay.
then broke it down and really taught us the principles behind it and gave us an outline. But they said, go be yourself, put your own stories in, teach the principles, don't try to be Zig.
Right.
And that's a powerful, powerful thing because Zig said himself, you make a terrible somebody else, but only you can be a terrific you. And so they really built this program to give the speaker um, their own self-identity, but with the principles. And so we teach goal setting, we teach building a better you, we build building lasting relationships. So those are the three main talks that he did. And so, I get hired I call them Zig Talks. I get hired to do Zig Talks. We help companies set goals, help individuals within the company set goals. There's a 7-step process, and it takes a good day, I believe, to properly set goals.
Sure.
And, with New Year's happening right now, we hear New Year's resolutions, and it's probably a repeat of what you said last year. And, but when you properly set goals, you look at the pros and the cons. You look at who this is going to benefit. Does it only benefit me? Is it fair to my circle of people? And so we really take a deep look at those goals and make sure that it's a worthy goal. And so, yeah, I started my career pretty much speaking out right from the Ziglar standpoint. And so I did a lot of Zig talks all throughout the country. And then I met Dr. Rome, who was Zig's friend. Dr. Rome and Zig would teach each other Sunday school class when one of them was not in town.
Okay.
And as you know, Dr. Rome is the world's leading authority on disc.
Hmm.
And Zig was a big believer in disc. They taught it, they promoted it. And then I met Dr. Rome and started studying disc almost in 2014, I think it was, soon
Okay.
after the Ziegler legacy. And so disc to me just kind of felt like that was it. I built my brand around it. I still do some Zig talks, but I'd say 98% of all of my stuff is around disc. People love when you talk to them about themselves, and that's what disc is. It's a study of personality. So that's kind of the progression from Zig over to disc, even though when I do a Zig talk, it's infused with disc. When I do a
Sure.
disc talk, it's infused with Zig. And so
Absolutely.
you get the package.
Absolutely. That impact's there and it gave you the pieces of that puzzle, right? I think we're
That's
always
right.
looking for the pieces of the puzzle that help us get one step closer. And so with Zig and Dr. Roman, you have all those together. When you and I met in person, that was a there were both there. There was discussion about leadership, but there was a lot of, we did the full disc day, I guess you would say, right?
Right.
The whole
Right.
deal. And it's funny, I sat in a conference maybe 6 months ago somewhere else, and uh, it was very topical. But then after a break, he comes back and the speaker says, "Okay, we're going to work through this assessment together." And he basically worked through a personality assessment, and I was like, "Oh, I know exactly what this is." And I'm not going to jump to the end, but I know what mine is. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
still went through the process the same just to make sure things change. And
Yeah.
but it did turn out to be the same for sure. But
Yeah.
disc
Yeah.
is an outstanding. Talk us through a little bit about that disc, because disc is so much of what you do. You're one of only 10 master trainers in the world. It's a huge part of your work. T Break down disc as much as you can without giving us all the secrets to disc.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll start very basic. DISC is a study of personality types. There's four types, the DISC DISC. The D is very dominant, decisive, dogmatic, determined. I want you to think of a person like Donald Trump. That would be a good example of a
Okay.
high D. High Ds like things fast, really quick, to the point. Don't beat around the bush. Just, on a phone conversation, get right to the point. Don't talk about the weather. Don't talk about your weekend. Just, it's very abrupt and very fast, and everything's a competition for a high D. And then you have the I type, which is the inspiring, inducing, impressionable, interested in people, sometimes illogical. I want you to think of Dolly Parton. It's all about fun, theme parks, glitter. It's about having fun and being around people. People excite a high I. They're not always logical. I can pretty much guarantee you the guy that or gal that thought about skydiving was a high I. But it was probably a high C that designed the parachute. Okay.
Absolutely.
Uh, so, then you have the S type. It's a very supportive, steady, stable, sweet, shy, Mother Teresa. They're the nicest people in the world. I believe that S-type people make weird sounds like, oh, they're very empathetic and they exude caring for people, and they care more about people than they care about themselves a lot of the times. Nicest people in the world. And then you have the C type, the very cautious, calculating, competent, critical thinking, careful, cognitive. But their downfall sometimes is they can appear or come across as cold and uncaring about other people's feelings. These are your lawyers, your architects, your engineers, your accountants, the smart people. They live up here, where the S's and the I's live right here out of their heart, and the D's live out of their muscles.
Okay.
And so that's kind of a quick wrap up. Every human being is a unique blend of all four types. You're not just a D, I, S, or a C. You have some of all. And so I started studying DISC because Howard, my coach, when I first started my first company, said, you really need to learn how to deal with people, because I'm a high DI. I'm off the charts on both of them. I'm a Donald Trump, Dolly Parton. I'm not a nice guy. I'm an exciting guy.
Right.
Okay. Like when I hear somebody is sick, my first, there's people out there that actually care if somebody is sick and will go, send them a note or go do their chores for them. I have to really work on that. I'm like, oh, that sucks. What else do I have to do today?
Right.
I'm not a nice guy. I'm an exciting guy.
Right.
And, um, and so my coach said, you really need to learn how to relate and communicate. So he started teaching me DISC, and I just was, really impacted by it. And I started seeing my wife in a different way, and I started seeing myself in a different way. And DISC, I believe, gives a individual the biggest gift that anybody can get, and that's the gift of awareness. And you can't be aware unless you are aware. And so I started seeing why my wife responds the way she does, and I am the way I am. My wife is a high CD, and that caused a little bit of conflict early on in our marriage, of me not understanding why she responds the way she does. She can be very task oriented, because both the C and the D are on the task side of the model. And so I really started studying it, not for my employees, but for our marriage.
Sure.
And I'm sure, I think when I was at the conference where you were at, I kind of told that story. I think so. I'm not quite sure. But
Hmm.
we had a rough time in our marriage about 3 years into it. We're getting ready to celebrate our 17th anniversary.
That's awesome.
And so I help companies and individuals within those companies learn about themselves so that they can self-regulate when it comes to communicating with other people. I help salespeople learn how to sell to a D, I, S, or a C. For instance, if I'm selling this pair of sunglasses to a high C, I would say something like this. These are really good sunglasses, but there's one thing I don't like about it. And it would be it'd be that the nose piece here fell off. Okay. I would literally talk negative about the product that I'm trying to sell if I'm selling to a high C, because their mind naturally thinks, well, what's wrong with it? What won't work? And I'm the most optimistic person there is. I go fishing and I take the tartar sauce with me, just like Zig used to say.
Yeah.
My wife, on the other hand, is not very optimistic. She looks for things that could go wrong. And so when I learned that in the sales world, speaking negatively first about a product or soon after the pitch begins, they say, "Oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's not trying to, hoodwink me into anything." And so there's different strategies that if you know personality types, you're able to adjust and pivot to their way of thinking and communicating. And think about this. If you're in China in the middle of, 1,000 people on a street, and all you hear is the Chinese language, and you don't understand Chinese language, and all of a sudden out of the crowd you hear, "Hey, Dustin," what would you think? What would you do? It would get your attention and say, somebody knows me, somebody knows my language. And personality is a language, and we need to learn how to speak the personality language so that we can effectively communicate and make them feel valued. Because I can tell you, if I speak D to my wife, who is a high C, it's not going to go well. But
Right.
when I lay down who I am, which is a biblical principle, and pick up who she is and speak from her perspective, she feels valued, and therefore her response back to me is much easier than if I go in with my Donald Trump type attitude.
Sure, absolutely. Uh we always think about disc training in a professional setting, but without question, I think, I just read a book recently, Winning Starts at Home, right? And it's a great
Yeah.
book, and it meant a lot to me at the time. But you not only do you do work with professionals, with salespeople, with leaders, but you and your wife together do some marriage work as well with implementing disc and other things. Talk about that a little bit if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mentioned that we have a story. About 3 years into our marriage, I wanted out. This is not what I signed up for. I wanted to go out to eat every other night. She wanted to stay home all the time. She's in my world, she would be considered boring, and in her world, I would be considered on something. She asked me one time, she said, "What are you on?" And I said, "Life. I'm on life. I love people. I love excitement. I like going out. I don't like leftovers. I want to experience every new thing that there is."
Sure.
And so this was before I understood DISC. And so within 3 years of our marriage, we started losing each other. And it was ironic, Dustin, because when I first saw her, it was in Honduras, where she's from. She was an interpreter on a missions trip.
Okay.
And the first thing that I thought of when I saw her and got to know her a little bit was I would imagine that her sock drawer is perfectly in order, that everything was laid out, and it is. Okay, she's that type of a person. And so I tend to be kind of all over the place, and there's some things I like really organized, but there's other things that I'm just like, "Oh man, let it go, man. Let's." And then she's very regimented and very, like, she eats at the same time, eats the same thing every day pretty much, and those that differences that I was attracted to, basically my radar said she has what I need. And I was super attracted to her. And, and I asked her, I said, what was your first impression of me when you first saw me? And she goes, I saw you and then I didn't.
Mm.
And I was like, what does that mean? Like, explain that. She says, well, I saw you over here and then I, had to do something. And I looked back where you were and you weren't there. You were now over here. She saw life. She saw movement. She saw energy, everything that she is not. And she was super attracted to me as well. And so you would think with that strong of a attraction and opposites attract, right?
Yep.
You would think that, 3 years would be marital bliss and there were butterflies and roses on our path. But very quickly, opposites can start attacking instead of attracting if you don't understand what's happening. And that's what started happening in our marriage. Her organization and her exactness started messing with my spontaneity and adventuresome spirit and entrepreneurial spirit and we started like attacking instead of attracting.
Sure.
And DISC really helped us. I would say, besides the grace of God, I would say DISC is what saved our marriage. And we still have that tendency to the differences to attack, but I think we need to get to the point as couples and even as teammates in a business
Sure.
where we value the differences. Not, people ask me all the time, should you marry your sameness or your oppositeness? And I said, well, it depends. If you want to become a better person, if you want to be stretched and pulled and changed to become a better person, marry your oppositeness. But if you want to have a fun-filled life with but not grow as a person, marry your sameness. If two eyes marry each other, they're going to have a fun life, but
Right.
they're going to be broke
Right.
because
Absolutely.
they want, adventure all the time. And so, yeah, we what kind of got us started on the path of marriage is I was in Pennsylvania and it was a very large Amish audience.
Hmm.
And my wife and I we were on the stage. We were telling this story at length, and afterwards, an 80-year-old Amish lady comes up to us at the back of the room and just starts bawling. And she says, maybe there's hope for me and my husband. Because we told our story and how we found each other again and reconciled. And so we were able to kind of help her through some things. And then I was back in the area about a month or two later, and she came again and she comes running up to me and says, are you going to tell your story? Are you going to tell your story? And I said, yes, we were planning on it. She said, good, because I brought my husband. And so we told our story again, and afterwards they came back and we were able to help them reconcile. And that kind of lit a fire in my wife and myself for, helping marriages because I believe that marriage is sacred. I believe it is vital to society for a healthy family to have a mother and father that love each other. And I know it doesn't always work out, but if I can do something to help. And so we started a Better Your Marriage Challenge. We started doing marriage masterminds, marriage conferences, and with the whole theme of DISC.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's really I love how you've blended that perfect blend of your professional life and your personal life together to help other people to have an impact on the world around you, not just at home, but in other people's homes and other people's businesses. I really appreciate that about you for sure.
Yeah.
So you speak, you travel all over the world and speak. Um, Tell us a little bit on it. Let's take a personal sidebar. Tell us a little bit about back in the beginning. You said that you wanted to become three things early in life: an auctioneer, a pilot, and a veterinarian, and you didn't become one of those. Tell us a little bit about that second one. So you're a pilot.
Yeah.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit.
So, growing up in Georgia, we had a large farm. We farmed about 1,000, 2,000 acres at one point. And so we had a lot of crop dusters spraying our fields, and we lived about a mile and a half from the airport. my uncle left the Mennonites, and I grew up Mennonite, and became a doctor, and he also bought a Cessna 182. And so, man, it was like my uncle was my hero, and now he has an airplane, and so I was going to fly an airplane. And I think my first toy was an airplane. I mean, it's all I thought of. And so on my 21st birthday, I became a private pilot. Flew just for a hobby, racked up about 200 hours over a period of 6 years. Nothing great, just flew as weekend warriors and having fun. And then, obviously started my career and stopped flying. I always knew that one day I would. Didn't think it would be at the level that I fly now. But during COVID, I got really tired of having to wear a mask and all the craziness of air travel because I was in the middle of speaking, all of that. And I said, why am I doing this? Why am I sitting beside total strangers, putting my health at risk when I could be flying my own airplane? So I went out and bought an airplane. And since then, I have about 1,000 hours. I've put a lot of hours on that airplane. So I get to fly wherever I go, weather depending. Obviously, I still fly commercial, but most times I fly my private plane everywhere I need to go. And it's called the Indy plane. So in 2009, when my plane rolled off the factory floor, Mooney, which is the manufacturer of the airplane, and Indy 500 had a promotion together because my plane type is the world's fastest single engine piston production aircraft. And so they wanted a one of those, the Mooney Acclaim, which is the fastest airplane, to open up the Indy 500 with a high speed, low pass. And so they painted my plane with a special paint scheme. And it has the checkered tail. And if your followers want to follow me on Facebook, they can go see the paint job. But it opened up the Indy 500 in 2009. So the plane is kind of famous. It actually, I haven't been able to verify this, what I'm about to tell you, but I've been told by previous owners that it's the one that set the record for the fastest aircraft at 242 knots.
Wow.
And I've actually had it faster than that. I've seen 286 knots, but that was with a really nice
Sure.
tailwind from Dallas, Texas to Millersburg, Ohio, 3 hours and 30 minutes nonstop.
Wow.
So that was a fun flight, but I absolutely love flying. It's something that I feel, well, in personality terms, my environment and my personality are perfectly lined up. Okay. And so in personality, in DISC, it's not always that your environment and your personality are perfectly lined up, and it's like this, and that's the difference a lot of times is when you feel kind of clumsy, you feel like I'm not in my perfect environment. So when I'm on my motorcycle, when I'm on my airplane, it's this. I feel great.
That
Yeah.
that's an awesome story, and I'm a follower on social media. As you know, we're connected on social media on Facebook and LinkedIn. But I love seeing pictures of the plane, and I think you said dreams do come true, right? That's a
That's right. And
uh,
let me tell you that. So long before I had even really thought about aircraft ownership for business, I came across a Mooney Acclaim, and it was a beautiful picture. And so I put it on my screensaver. This was like probably 4 years before I actually decided to buy a plane. Put it on my screensaver and put the word someday. And it was representative of an aircraft, not specifically that type.
sure.
And lo and behold, about 4 years later, I bought an airplane, and a guy on social media, is when I put it out there that I'm looking for an aircraft and I'd like to have some advice on what type. Um, this guy, called me up and said, I have the perfect airplane for you. And it was the exact type of aircraft that I put on my screensaver 4 years ago.
That's all. That's a great story. I love that
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
That's awesome. So as we're kind of wrapping up here, you travel around. We've talked about your speaking. We've talked about disc. Tell us a little bit. You do coaching as well, and we've kind of woven that in. But you do one-on-one coaching. Tell us a little bit more about your coaching business.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm an entrepreneur. I love businesses. I own five of them, and I had some success with my first several companies that I started. Sold a couple of them, and so people started coming to me and said, "Will you come to my company and do whatever you did to your company?" And I said, "Well, I hired a coach. You need to go hire a coach." And they said, "No, we want you to be our coach." And I said, "No," for the first maybe 15 people.
Hmm.
And finally, I said, maybe that's part of that calling because it was still out there. And so, I say yes to opportunities. And so, one of my mentors, Delatorre McNeil, said, "Opportunities never go away; they only go to other people." And so I was like, I'm giving opportunities that I could get paid highly for to other people. And so I finally said yes. And so I coach on six pillars of business: marketing, sales, procedures, office, relationships, and leadership. So it's the full gamut of any business. And so we have 10 systems under each one of those six pillars that my coaching firm helps implement into a business. So yeah, it is one-on-one with the business owner. We tend to work in the service and manufacturing industries with employees. And we do a lot of under the leadership pillar. We help, leaders lead their company and inspire their employees to want to work instead of there for a paycheck. They're there for the purpose. And so, yeah, we've had tremendous success. We've taken companies, from 12 million all the way to 28 million in 6 months. I could tell you story after story. And it's really the thing, they hire me to fix their employees,
Mhm.
but I never really fix the employees. I fix the leader. And see, you have to become a leader worth following. And so they're kind of surprised when I say, "No, let's not talk about them. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about you." And it goes back to the whole thing. When you get the man right, the world becomes right. And so my goal is to help leaders become a leader worth following. And because everybody wants to follow a great leader.
Absolutely, without question.
Yeah. So we have about six different programs that, should fit most budgets. Our sweet spot is, 5 million on up. That's where we like to be. But we have programs for startups. I have some coaches that below me that coach those companies. My schedule is filling up pretty fast for 2025 already. And we have a couple of spots open. And here's what I would like to offer to your listeners.
Mhm.
Two things. There's a free disc assessment on my website, but there's also a free one-on-one call with me. And I want to offer that to any of your listeners, your watchers that are business owners. You have to be a business owner in
Okay.
order to take advantage of that. And that's all on the website.
Very good. We'll put the link in the show notes as well for our listeners. And that your website is davekaufmanspeaks.com.
That's correct. DaveKaufmanSpeaks.com.
Very good. Awesome. Well, so hey, just a few more minutes as we wrap up. Is there anything that you wish that people knew about your work? That we've talked all about your work. We've talked about your personal life and your professional life. Is there anything that you wish folks knew about your work that we haven't covered?
Great question. A friend of mine, we were just having lunch last week, and we were talking about fame versus significance. Okay. There is a certain amount of fame that comes along with speaking. Author, I wrote the four books behind me here. And being on stage, there's a certain amount of that. And at one point, I was chasing more of the fame part and wanted to go big. I wanted to become a well-known name throughout the country. And The older I get, I think the wiser I become because I'm not seeking fame. I'd much rather be significant. And I think the difference between fame, well, I have a quote for that. It's to be famous is when a lot of different people know you. To be significant is when you make a difference in a lot of people you know. Okay. I want to I want to make a difference. I want to make an impact. I love your podcast theme here. It's about impact. I want to make an impact that ripples throughout eternity. And I believe that's going to be one thing that is going to keep me entertained for eternity once I'm in heaven is watching the ripple effect play backwards.
Absolutely.
Think about that. A lot of times the impact that I make, I don't even know the impact because I'm speaking to, thousands of people and they go and they live their life, but one thing I might have said changed their life. And I think in heaven we're going to be able to watch that ripple effect play backwards and see what all happened because of what happened at that conference to this person because of what I said, and a family was changed, a life was changed. That's what I want. I want people to know that there is a opportunity to become a better person, a more well-rounded person, personal development, and I just want to be a part of that. I want to be the carrier of impact for as many people as God puts in front of me.
Absolutely. And you said it, that impact, it has generational impact, right?
Yeah.
We don't realize, going to that conference that day, I didn't realize that I was going to get to meet you, and the impact that that's had on my life. But you have the opportunity in your work to encounter so many people, and while on Earth, you may not get to see the significance of each and every one of those lives impacted. And I think a lot of our listeners, a lot of people don't probably sit down and think about the impact, right? They don't think about the
Right.
we look for the $1 million seminar. We look for that, huge takeaway
Yeah.
things, but sometimes it's the little things. It's a one-liner. It's just one thing
Yeah.
that we took away that completely changes our life. And so I very much appreciate all of your work. I appreciate you being on the show with us today. And so again, DaveKaufmanSpeaks.com. That's two F's in Kaufman, right? And so
Right.
DaveKaufmanSpeaks.com, that there you go, right behind him. We'll have the link in the show notes. But Dave, thanks again. This is your impact story, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Destin.